Hi everybody, welcome back. Good to be with you again. So today I'm going to read the Apocalypse of Adam. I know I said I'd do it near the end, but to be honest I am quite near the end now anyway. So can finish up with these relatively soon and get on to other topics again while we've got time. So I'm going to do Adam today. I've still got Hebrew Elijah to do and Baruch. I was going to do Baruch today, but it's quite long. And I've still got Thomas, James, John, Peter and Paul as well. But getting there anyway. There is a bit of Baruch that I want to mention at the end if I've got time on this. If not, I'll just go into it on the next video anyway. But this is the Apocalypse of Adam, the Nag Hammadi library. It was written about 1 century AD apparently, because of the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. It had to be rewritten. So, without further ado, here we go. The revelation which Adam taught his son Seth in the 700th year, saying, "Listen to my words, my son Seth. When God had created me out of the earth, along with Eve, your mother, I went about with her in a glory which she had seen in the eon from which we had come forth. She taught me a word of knowledge of the eternal God, and we resembled the great eternal angels, for we were higher than the God who had created us, and the powers with him, whom we did not know. Then God, the ruler of the eons and the powers, divided us in wrath. Then we came to 2 eons, and the glory in our hearts left us, me and your mother Eve, along with the first knowledge that breathed in us. And it fled from us, it entered into something, great something, which had come forth. Not from this eon, from which we had come forth, I and Eve your mother, but it entered into the seed of great eons. For this reason I myself have called you by the name of that man who is the seed of a great generation, or from whom it comes. After those days the eternal knowledge of the God of truth withdrew from me and your mother Eve. Since that time we learned about dead things, like men. Then we recognized the God who had created us, for we were not strangers to his power, and we served him in fear and slavery. And after these things we became darkened in our hearts. Now I slept in the thought of my heart. And I saw 3 men before me, whose likeness I was unable to recognize, since they were not the powers of the God who had created us. They surpassed something glory and something men something, saying to me, "Arise, Adam, from the sleep of death, and hear about the eon and the seed of the man to whom life has come, whom came from you and from Eve, your wife." When I heard these words from the great men who were standing before me, then we sighed, I and Eve, in our hearts, and the Lord, the God who had created us, stood before us. He said to us, "Adam, why were you both sighing in your hearts? Do you not know that I am the God who created you? And I breathed into you the spirit of life as a living soul. Then darkness came upon our eyes. Then the God who created us created a son from himself and Eve, your mother. I knew sweet desire for your mother, for something, in the thought of my something. I knew a sweet desire for your mother. Then the vigour of our eternal knowledge was destroyed in us, and weakness pursued us. Therefore the days of our life became few. For I knew that I had come under the authority of death. Now then, my son Seth, I will reveal to you the things which those men whom I saw before me at first revealed to me. After I have completed the times of this generation, and the years of the generation have been accomplished, then slave. For rain, showers of God the Almighty will be poured forth, so that he might destroy all flesh of God the Almighty, so that he might, it says it again, what? From the earth on account of the things that it seeks after, along with those from the seed of men to whom passed the life of knowledge, which came from me and Eve, your mother. For they were strangers to him. Afterwards, great angels will come on high clouds, who will bring those men into the place where the Spirit of life dwells. Something glory, something there, something come from heaven to earth. Then the whole multitude of flesh will be left behind in the waters. Then God will rest from his wrath, and he will cast his power upon the waters, and he will give power to his sons and their wives by means of the ark, along with the animals, whichever he pleased, and the birds of heaven, which he called and released upon the earth. And God will say to Noah, whom the generations will call Dusalion, behold, I have protected you in the ark, along with your wife, your sons and their wives, and their animals, and the birds of heaven, which you called and released upon the earth. Therefore I will give the earth to you, you and your sons. In kingly fashion you will rule over it, you and your sons, and no seed will come from you of the men who will not stand in my presence in another glory. Then they will become as the cloud of the great light. Those men will come who have been cast forth from the knowledge of the great eons and the angels. They will stand before Noah and the eons. And God will say to Noah, why have you departed from what I told you? You have created another generation so that you might scorn my power. Then Noah will say, I shall testify before your might, that the generations of these men did not come from me, nor my sons. Something knowledge. And he will, those men, and bring them into a proper land, and build them a holy dwelling place. And they will be called by name, and dwell there 600 years, in a knowledge of imperishability. And the angels of the great light will dwell with them. No foul deed will dwell in their hearts, but only the knowledge of God. Then Noah will divide the whole earth among his sons, Ham, Japheth, and Shem. He will say to them, my sons, listen to my words. Behold, I have divided the earth among you, but serve him in fear and slavery all the days of your life. Let not your seed depart from the face of God Almighty. I and your sons of Noah. My seed will be pleasing before you and before your power. Seal it by your strong hand with fear and commandment, so that the whole seed may come forth from me, may not be inclined away from the God the Almighty, but it will serve in humility and fear of its knowledge. Then others from the seed of Ham and Japheth will come, 400,000 men, and enter into another land, and sojourn with these men who came forth from the great eternal knowledge. For the shadow of their power will protect those who have sojourned with them from every evil thing and every unclean desire. Then the seed of Ham and Japheth will form 12 kingdoms, and their seed also will enter into a kingdom of another people. Then something will take counsel, something who are dead, of the great eons of imperishability, and they will go to Sakla, their god, and they will go into the powers, accusing the great men who are in their glory. They will say to Sakla, what is the power of these men who stood in your presence? Who are they taken from? The seed of Ham and Japheth, who will number 400,000 men? They have been received into another eon from which they have come forth, and they have overturned all the glory of your power and the dominion of your hand. For the seed of Noah through his sons has done all your will, and so have all the powers in those eons, over which your might rules, while both those men and the ones who are sojourners in their glory have not done your will, but they have turned aside your whole throng. Then the God of the eons will give them, some of those who serve him, something. They will come upon that land where the great men will be who have not been defiled, nor will be defiled, by any desire, for their soul did not come from the defiled land, but it came from a great commandment of an eternal angel. Then fire and sulphur and asphalt will be cast upon all men, and fire and blinding mist will come over those eons, and the eyes of the powers of the illuminators will be darkened, and the eons will not see them in those days. And the great clouds of light will descend, and other clouds of light will come upon them from great eons. Abrasax and Sablo and Gamaliel will descend and bring those men out of the fire and the wrath, and take them above the eons and the rulers of the powers, and take them away, something of life, something, and take them away, something eons, dwelling place of the great, something there, with the holy angels and the eons. The men will be like those angels, for they are not strangers to them, they work in the imperishable seed. Once again, for the third time, the illuminator of knowledge will pass by in a great glory, in order to leave something of the seed of Noah and the sons of Ham and Japheth, to leave for himself fruit-bearing trees. He will redeem their souls from the day of death. For the whole creation that came from the dead earth will be under authority of death. But those who reflect upon the knowledge of the eternal God in their hearts will not perish. For they have not received the spirit of this kingdom alone, but they have received it from an eternal angel, illuminator. Someone will come upon something that it is dead, something of Seth. And he will perform signs and wonders in order to scorn the powers and their ruler. Then the God of the powers will be disturbed, saying, "What is the power of this man who is higher than we?" Then he will accuse a great wrath. Then he will arouse a great wrath against that man, and the glory will draw and dwell in the holy houses which it has chosen for itself. And the powers will not see it with their eyes, nor will they see the illuminator either, when they will perish the flesh of man upon whom the Holy Spirit came. Then the angels and all the generations of the powers will use the name in error, asking, "Where did the error, come from? Or where did the words of deception, which all the powers have failed to discover, come from?" Now the first kingdom says of him that he came from something, a spirit, something, to heaven. He was nourished in the heavens. He received the glory of that one, and the power. He came to the bosom of his mother, and thus he came to the water. And the second kingdom says about him that he came from a great prophet. And a bird came, took the child who was born, and brought him to a high mountain. And he was nourished by the bird of heaven. An angel came forth here. He said to him, "Arise, God has given glory to you." He received glory and strength, and thus he came to the water. The third kingdom says of him that he came from a virgin womb. He was cast out of his city, he and his mother. He was brought to a desert place. He was nourished there. He came and received glory and strength. Thus he came to the water. fourth kingdom says of him that he came from a virgin. Solomon sought her, he and Pharsalo and Sael and his armies, which had been sent out. Solomon himself sent his army of demons to seek out the virgin, and they did not find the one whom they sought, but the virgin who was given them. It was she whom they fetched. Solomon took her, the virgin became pregnant, and gave birth to the child there. She nourished him on a border of the desert, when he had been nourished, and he received glory and power from the seed from which he had begotten. And thus he came to the water. And the fifth kingdom says of him that he came from a drop up from heaven. He was thrown into the sea, the abyss received him, gave birth to him, and brought him to heaven. He received glory and power, and thus he came to the water. And in the sixth kingdom says that something, down to the aeon which is below, in order to gather flowers. She became pregnant from the desire of the flowers. She gave birth to him in that place. The angels of the flower garden nourished him. He received glory there, and power, and thus he came to the water. The seventh kingdom says of him that he is a drop, that it came from heaven to earth. Dragons brought him down to caves. He became a child. A spirit came upon him and brought him on high to that place where the drop had come forth. He received glory and power there, and thus he came to the water. The eighth kingdom says of him that a cloud came upon the earth and enveloped a rock. He came from it. The angels who were above the cloud nourished him. He received glory and power there, and thus he came to the water. And the ninth kingdom says of him that from the 9 muses one separated away. She came to a high mountain and spent some time seated there, so that she desired herself alone, in order to become Androninus. She fulfilled her desire and became pregnant from her desire. He was born. The angels who were over the desire nourished him, and he received glory there and power, and thus he came to the water. The 10th kingdom says of him that his God loved a cloud of desire. He begot him in his hand and cast upon the cloud above him some of the drop, and he was born. He received glory and power there, and thus he came to the water. And the 11th kingdom says that the father desired his own daughter. She herself became pregnant from her father. She cast something, tomb, out in the desert. The angel nourished him there, and thus he came to the water. The 12th kingdom says of him that he came from 2 illuminators. He was nourished there, he received glory and power, and thus he came to the water. The 13th kingdom says of him that every birth of their ruler is a word, and this word received a mandate there. He received glory and power, thus he came to the water, in order that the desire of those powers might be satisfied. But the generation without a king over it says that God chose him from all the eons. He caused the knowledge of the undefiled one of truth to come to be in him. He said, out of a foreign air, from a great eon, the great illuminator came forth, and he made the generation of those men whom he had chosen for himself shine, so that they could shine upon the whole eon. Then the seed, those who will receive his name upon the water, and that of them all, will fight against the power, and a cloud of darkness will come upon them. Then the peoples will cry out with a great voice, saying, blessed is the soul of those men, because they have known God with the knowledge of the truth. They shall live forever, because they have not been corrupted by their desire, along with the angels, nor have they accomplished the works of the powers, but they have stood in the presence in a knowledge of godlike light that has come forth from the fire and blood. But we have done every deed of the powers senselessly. We have boasted in a transgression of all our works. We have cried against God in truth, because all his works, something, is eternal. These are against our spirits, for now we have known that our souls will die the death. Then a voice came to them, saying, Michael and Micah and Nessinus, who are over the holy baptism and the living water, why were you crying out against the living God with lawless voices and tongues without law over them, and souls full of blood and foul deeds? You are full of works that are not of the truth, but your ways are full of joy and rejoicing. Having defiled the water of life, you have drawn it within the will of the powers to whom you have been given to serve them. And your thought is not like that of those men whom you persecute. Something desire something. Their fruit does not wither, but they will be known up to the great eons, because the words they have kept of the God of the eons were not committed to the book, nor were they written, but angelic beings will bring them, whom all the generations of men will not know, for they will be on a high mountain, upon a rock of truth. Therefore they will be named the words of imperishability and truth. For those who know the eternal God in wisdom of knowledge and teaching of angels, forever he knows all things. These are the revelations which Adam made known to Seth his son, and his son taught his seed about them. This is the hidden knowledge of Adam, which he gave to Seth, which is the holy baptism of those who know the eternal knowledge, through those born of the word and the imperishable illuminators, who come from the holy seed, Jesus, Mazarus, Yesedekus, the living water. The Apocalypse of Adam. Amen. So yeah, that was quite short. That's it. Sorry, my reading's terrible. Should be a bit better now, seeing as I do read quite a lot at the moment. But anyway, getting on to this. This was somewhere in Baruch, chapter 27. The 12 woes that are to come upon the earth, the Messiah and the temporary messianic kingdom. I'll just read it and then I'll talk after. And he answered and said to me, so the question before, what will, I answered and said, what would a tribulation, which is to be, will that tribulation, which is to be continue a long time, and will that necessarily you read that title yourself, yeah? Cheers. Here we go. And he answered and said to me, into 12 parts is that time divided, and each one of them is reserved for that which is appointed for it. In the first part there shall be the beginning of commotions. In the second part there shall be slayings of great ones. And in the third part, the fall of many by death. And in the fourth part, the sending of the sword. And in the fifth part, famine and withholding of rain. And in the sixth part, earthquakes and terrors. 8 is wanting. 9. And in the 8th part, a multitude of spectres and attacks from the Shadim. And in the 9th part, the fall of fire. And in the 10th part, rapine and much oppression. And in the 11th part, wickedness and unchastity. And in the 12th part, confusion from the mingling together of all those things aforesaid. For these parts of that time are reserved, and shall be mingled one with another, and minister one to another. For some shall leave out some of their own, and receive in its stead from others. And some completed their own, and that of others, so that they may not understand who are upon the earth in those days, that this is the consummation of the times. Nevertheless, whoever stands shall then be wise. For the measure and reckoning of that time are 2 parts, a week of 7 weeks. And I answered and said, Is it good for a man to come and behold? But it is better that he should not come, lest he fall. But I will say also, will he who is incorruptible despise those things which are corruptible? And whatever befalls in the case of those things which are corruptible, so that he might look only to those things which are not corruptible. But if, O Lord, those things shall surely come to pass, which you have foretold to me, so do you show this also unto me, if indeed I have found grace in your sight. It is in one place, or in one of the parts of the earth, that those things are come to pass, or is it the whole earth that will experience them? And he answered and said to me, Whatever then will befall the whole earth. Therefore all who will experience them, for at that time I will protect only those who are found in those self-same days in this land. And it shall come to pass, when all the accomplishments that it was to come to pass in those parts, that the Messiah shall then begin to be revealed. And Behemoth shall be revealed from his place, and Leviathan shall ascend from the sea. Those 2 great monsters which I created on the 5th day of creation, and shall have been kept until that time. And then shall they be food for the whole that are left. The earth also shall yield its fruit 10,000-fold, and on each something fine. There shall be 1,000 branches, and each branch shall produce 1,000 clusters, and each cluster produce 1,000 grapes, and each grape produce 1,000 cor of wine. And those who have hungered shall rejoice. Moreover, also, they shall behold marvels every day. For wind shall go forth from before me to bring every morning the fragrance of aromatic fruits. And at the close of the day, clouds will distill the dew of the health. And it shall come to pass that at the self-same time that the treasury of manna shall begin to descend from on high. And they will eat of it in those years, because these are they who have come to the consummation of the time. And it shall come to pass after these things, when the time of the advent of the Messiah is fulfilled, that he shall return in glory. So, it's talking about the time, the year being divided into 12 parts, and I was thinking, there is famine in the world. That all these things are already, most of these things are already in the world, but they're not each worldwide thing. So it's saying here that everyone in the world is going to experience all of them, but only some countries at the moment are in war, and people being sent by the sword. Like being killed by war and that in their country. Things like famine. The weather's getting a bit more dramatically different to what it was even a decade ago now. So I imagine that's going to start growing in places now. The withholding of rain will be with that in that time span. So when the famine comes, so with lack of rain, and then after that, the earthquakes and terrors will start coming. But there seems to be a lot on here that hasn't taken place, say, where I live in England yet. Not for most people anyway, so don't know if we've got a lot of time. We might have a bit of time, at least enough time for me to read the rest of these apocalypses and do some other topics and talk about our good Lord Yeshua. But anyway, until then, I wish you all well and I hope you're all doing well, and I'll speak to you all soon. God bless.